The agenda is student body president. It's Anwar Sheikh.
Yeah.
Good? Okay, awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm the new ASB president, Anwar. Um, my report, basically what's going on with the high school right now is we're gearing up towards homecoming. So everything in like student council, we're just like trying to rev that up with the dance and back to school night, stuff like that. Just basically be fun. The theme for the dance is the wild hunt. So it's kind of like safari based. Yeah. Other than that, school's going by pretty good, and you guys should have fun.
All right. And as always, we do tell our student reps you're more than welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but we also understand if you have after-school duties, homework, band, whatever, you can stay as long as you want or leave when you want. Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question? Anwar, are you personally happy with your involvement in school activities so far? You know, this activity?
Yeah.
Have you actually met as a council, or?
As a council, we came up with the theme for the dance and stuff like that. So our involvement, I'd say I'm pretty happy with it.
Good.
Yeah.
And other members of your council are equally as involved, and
Yeah, I would say they're equally as invested as I am.
how are, as you've attended class now for a little over a week, do you feel that David Douglas has given you a good quality education and the rest of the students?
Yes, I would say so.
You happy with the teaching staff?
Mm-hmm. More than happy.
The administrators?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're ready for visiting delegations and attendee input. And Dan's not here tonight, so Derek has to do it. We don't have any visiting delegations tonight, so. And I did move the microphone closer to my mouth because I know I don't talk that loud. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Silky Akerson. I say that wrong every time. It's Silka. Is the Akerson right? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna get it someday.
It's all right, it's been mispronounced continuously. I was hoping to talk to you about two things. Just briefly, I wanted to follow up on the thing that I've talked about every time that I've been here, which is prioritizing hiring and retaining teachers of color. I just wanted to say that there's a new African-American teacher at my son's elementary school, and seeing her on the first day of school and back to the school night was just really heartening. And I know that it's just a person, but I think it made a huge difference, and I think it made a huge difference for me, and I'm white, so I can only imagine the huge difference that it makes for other families. So I just wanted to say thank you and keep it up. But the main reason I came to talk to you was I was wanting to talk about school start time and to know if the district has been thinking about that at all. I was just reminded of some research recently that there are a lot of health and academic problems that come, especially for middle and high schoolers, with the early school start time and conflicting with them getting the minimum 8 hours of sleep that they're supposed to get. And
Craig Rogers.
Good evening. I've lived next to Flint Middle School since 1978. I have a lot to share here. May not get it in 3 minutes, but here we go. It's about safety, quality of life, and a budget buster. So I've lived there, witnessed recently assaults, acid thrown on vehicles, break-ins, delivered boxes on porches stolen, parents right in front just this week waiting for their kids to come out of school, and here comes a homeless person, just blows off, yelling at them for probably the distance of 100 yards, and needles and condoms and trash and so many more unspeakable things. Mayor Ted Wheeler announces community policing project. Springwater Corridor, Lowellhurst, Old Town, North Park Blocks, Ankeny Alley, Hawthorne Business District. I don't see anything about East Portland in there. And he's down there picking up candy wrappers, you know, and putting them in a bag on TV. Well, I'd like to see him pick something like that up, because that was right there until the day before school. And that's through the gates of higher learning. That's into David Douglas property there. Okay, and here they are pulling up in front of my house, license plate, New York City, and they call up, and their friends come out of wherever they're at, and because they just got here to the land of milk and honey and free crack pipes. And in here, this is recent, just Tuesday, Old Town Shelter will need major repair. Despite immediate needs, site may not be ready for homeless use anytime soon. What was Mr. Wheeler's #1 priority he got elected on? He was going to do something about the homeless. Portland's garbage. Wheeler homeless budget could be cut for other needs. That's going to be the budget buster for David Douglas schools right there, because you're going to have those piles all over the place. Mayor, city budget can't keep up big spending on homeless. Here's somebody wrote a letter, Oregonian printed. Wheeler's follow through. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler can't follow through on his #1 priority, the homeless, so now he creates a diversion of solving clean air by blowing hot air. Here we got a poor homeless woman, or rabbits in the back seat of the car. And you know, this is from back in April. You know, you'd think something would be done for these people. And now believe it or not, I don't know, have you seen this? This is the city's report card for 4 years. Came out at the end of last year. I have a whole bunch of copies for people, because it's not getting any better at all. And here's the kind of letter you ought to draft to Ted Wheeler to tell him to put his big boy pants on, because Mark Galkey, we took 2 houses down. He and I were really tight. There were 2 abandoned houses there that were estuaries of crime. And this is the letter that I took down to Sam Adams and read to City Council. And within 2 months, those houses were gone, including the foundation. Sick and tired of this. You know, people have titles and they get paid good money, and what do? I know how they get there. They build these little rungs that look really good at resumes. Oh yeah, I trust it. I'm gonna vote for that person to get in there, and they wonder why they aren't doing anything. Thank you.
I'll take one of your copies. Report card and anything else.
Good letter this is incredible by Mark. You know, God rest his soul.
The report card. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, Heather Franklin.
Hello. So I just have a few little things I want to talk about today. First, I want to really thank the board for adding the levels of transparency. It was so nice to go on the board to pull the agenda this month and to see that there was all these, the packet, and I could read about what you guys are talking about and know and feel like, you know, the community is like being acknowledged and included. So I really want to thank you. I think that adding that level of transparency is really helpful, and it's helpful for a lot of folks who can't be here. And on that, I really want to thank Anna and for bringing up the accessibility issue of these meetings. I had loaded the car with all 5 of my kids on the way here, and thankfully, right in the last time, I didn't have to bring the little 3, but it's such a huge barrier. I've spoke to at least 5 people today who are not here because of childcare. So I really want to reinforce that that is a major block to people participating in these community meetings, and I wouldn't have thought to ask for that, so I just want to reinforce how helpful I think that would be if we could have, you know, more shorter meetings and childcare available. That would be really helpful. And then also, and in that theme, I'd like to talk about a little bit about accountability. There's one thing that has bothered me a bit is that in the board policy, it states specifically that if a specific question is asked of the board, whether by email or by in public testimony, that within a reasonable amount of time, those questions will be answered. And I've noticed that personally, I've had lots of questions unanswered. I've had lots very well answered. But also I've noticed people in public testimony ask questions that have, unless they were communicated outside of board meetings, have not been answered as well. So I'd like to bring up that I think we're lacking a bit in accountability on that specific board policy item of answering specific questions that are brought up in public forum. And then I want to thank Stephanie and Anna for bringing up the idea of the subcommittee for the equity plan. I think that would be really helpful. And in that theme, I would like to draw attention to kind of a national and local issue of dress code and how that's such a huge barrier in terms of equity, and that I think would be a good thing to be talking about at the same time while we're thinking about what an equity goal should look like. I don't know how many of you have seen, but we have this best practices that got developed in Oregon, the Oregon Now model, and I've been in communication with them and they're happy to present to the board, that has been adopted locally in some local districts, but also it's been adopted in many other states. So like Evanston and Illinois, I have a friend there that they're raving about how well it's been uptook by the community. And it's just so nicely put together. I'd like to read the bullet point values real quick so you can get an idea without getting into too much detail. So the model was created to help school districts update and improve their dress code policies and enforcement practices. It says student dress code should support equitable educational access and should not reinforce gender stereotypes. Dress codes and administrative enforcement should not enforce or increase marginalization or oppression of any group. And then down the page a bit, the values are all students should be able to dress comfortably for school without fear or actual unnecessary discipline or body shaming. All students and staff should understand they are responsible for managing their own personal distractions without regulating individual students' clothing or self-expression. Teachers can focus on teaching without policing the students. Students should not face unnecessary barriers to school attendance, and reasons for conflict and inconsistent discipline would be minimized whenever possible. So there was conversation last week when we talked about suspension and expulsions, that dress codes aren't necessarily being captured in suspension data. So if a girl is kicked out of class, she may spend the whole day in the office not getting educated, but she's also not being captured in that data. So that's missing. It's also not consistent. And also, one of the conversations that happens with Oregon Now model developers is that in terms of the district wanting to uptake it, creating a consistent policy for the district takes away legal challenges. So one thing that they see a lot is that when schools are able to develop their own dress codes, sometimes there's a lot of violations of laws in Title IX because some things may be, you know, directly contradictory to the law. And so having a district-wide policy negates any of those types of concerns about, you know, breaking people's civil rights. So I really hope that the board will consider just adopting this model. I mean, if you want to do listening sessions and all of those things, I think that's great. I've shared with the board some of the conversations I've had in meeting with parents about dress code and our daughters and what they've experienced, especially at the middle school level. But I don't want to spend a lot of time talking anecdotally. But anyway, please consider adopting this model and maybe inviting those folks to come and present at the next school board meeting. Thank you.
Okay. John Bentley?
Good evening.
Hi there.
Okay, so for the past several months, myself and many other attendees have been voicing our opinions regarding the racist comments coming from board members, namely Bryce Anderson. In a move that further highlights racist tendencies amongst the board, Bryce Anderson has proposed a Constitution Week for the district, which would include having students participate in possibly naturalization ceremonies. May I ask why this type of practice is necessary in this diverse school environment? especially outside in the halls, seeing signs that welcome many students of different backgrounds. This plan is an attack on immigrant status and an unnecessary way of highlighting a student's citizenship. As thousands of young immigrants last week mourned the racist decision to rescind DACA, the school board here cannot afford to subject students to a similar ridicule and segregation practice. I ask you today to please put yourself in the shoes of these amazing young people who have been in this country as long as they can remember. How would you feel if you were subject to this type of discrimination from your peers for where you came from? While I am disappointed with the outcome of the vote to censure Bryce and this proposal, I am pleased by Stephanie Stevens and Ana Del Rocio's initiative in creating an equity plan for this district. This equity plan brings forth the promise of practicing racial equality in schools instead of highlighting inequality based on citizenship or immigrant status. I would ask a few things of this equity plan in order to help it succeed. Number one, end racial disparities in order to help students succeed by clearly defining racism to students and why it is harmful on multiple levels. Number two, hire racially diverse staff to support the diversity of our students. Number three, seek out advice and help from the City of Portland's Office of Equity and Human Rights. Their office just seems to be doing really great work in setting these foundations for this equity type planning. And number four is create a sense of urgency amongst the district. So with all these things in mind, it is time that we encourage our board to enact this plan swiftly. Let's end racism in our schools together. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Cam Koval.
I'm here to make a statement on behalf of Pueblo Unido. I'd like to start by thanking the board for their recent health equity initiatives, particularly the newer members of the board who've taken that on. I'd like to echo Heather's statements, thanking you guys for improving the transparency and putting the minutes on. That's really helpful, and it's just nice to be better informed. And providing childcare would be nice. I know folks who couldn't make it today for the same reason. And I'd like to express support for creating an equity subcommittee. I think there's a lot of potential for that to be impactful if it incorporates community input and really provides written recommendations to the board that they take seriously. I think it'd be interesting to see food pantry volunteers from this high school and other kids who are students, current and former, who've been active in their community participate and really have their voices amplified there. And then finally, I would like to address the proposal, floated in previous meetings to hold a naturalization ceremony here. I'm sure that that's a well-intentioned gesture to recognize the hard work and arduous process for certain students and their families that went through that, and that's a cause to celebrate. But I would suggest that the school is not an appropriate place for that. I'd like to remind the board that not everybody is eligible for citizenship or can just simply apply for naturalization, even if they want to work hard. It's a lot more complicated than that, and I'd like the board to recognize that such an initiative might be more antagonistic than beneficial. And this is in a climate, climate in which national immigration policy is one of fear and anxiety, mixed signals about who's protected and who needs to leave, who's a priority and who's not. All bets seem to be off. There's rumors of a national raid coming up that were then canceled, and who knows whether they were just postponed. Point is, school board doesn't need to feed into this fear in the community. So I'd ask you please reconsider that and reject that proposal. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of attendee input. Now we're ready for the superintendent's report.
And I would, because there isn't childcare available here, and I would like to make a statement if I may have 2 minutes.
Sure, since we're below the 30-minute amount of time allocated. Can I have your name? So I'm going to write it here for you.
That's okay. My name is Christina Crow. I've been at these meetings before. My last name is spelled C-R-O-W. I am a teacher within the David Douglas School District and the Extended Day Program at 2 different schools. I am here to reiterate my call for censure of Bryce Anderson. In this society right now, we are fighting a battle for equity on all fronts, and this battle needs to be happening here. And Bryce Anderson's comments reflect a lot of cultural ignorance and a lack of understanding for what's going on in our society. And if you don't understand that and you can't genuinely be prepared to come to this board and make statements and make decisions that protect the safety and health of all of the students, then you should not be on the board. And the other people in this room need to censor that person so that the students and the whole community at large can see that having those kinds of ideologies is not acceptable in our school district, that white supremacy is not acceptable in our school district, that making racist statements is not acceptable, and that people who make those kinds of statements are not going to be given authority in our communities and are not going to be given a platform to speak in our communities. There's no more room for it. Racism is really toxic, and allowing someone who does not have the cultural education or the filter, the ability to check themselves and also apologize sincerely and show remorse for their behavior and move forward with a constructive understanding about what ICE is, what people who are immigrants face in our community, that person should not have a platform in our community, period. And the board has a responsibility to censure this person so that the students who I see at protest rallies, I've been on the streets, I also teach in the school, I also raise a child. My child is second-generation Mexican immigrant. There are people in my family, peers in my communities that I've grown up with, and I see how ICE affects them. If a person on our board is so oblivious to the problems that the children in our school district face, they have no place on the board. And this is the time in our society that we really have to have zero tolerance for those ideologies, period. This person needs to be censured, and also equity trainings for the whole board, because this should not be such a fight. It should not be such a fight for our community to have someone with toxic ideology, toxic stereotypes, unhealthy ways of thinking lifted up among us and allowed to have authority. It's ridiculous. So I'm going to, along with other people in our community, going to be continuing to come to the board every month that I can. I'm also a mom, and I also have other responsibilities. I didn't make it last month, but I'm going to be here every time that I can. I have a responsibility for my students that actually have to deal with what ICE does. I was trained with the
Okay, 3 minutes is
ACLU
up.
to monitor ICE. You are not aware of what's going on in your society or community, and you have no place here.
Okay, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a few things to report on. The very first is start of school. We had an interesting start of school this year with smoke and with heat, and I just want to thank our entire community for all of their flexibility during the process, our teachers for all they did during the process, our staff, everyone involved did the best they could to make a great environment and a great first week, second week, and we're on the roll. So the biggest is just acknowledge it was an interesting start with the fires and everything that happened, but the reality of how everyone came together to make it the best days possible for our kids is something that I really appreciate from our communities, our families, our staff, and our schools. So that's number one. Then two, jumping into a few different business items. Number one, just wanted to share with the board that with the ESSA adoption in this last legislative cycle, the legislature, adopted Senate Bill 20, which implemented ESSA, basically said that we will follow ESSA, which was required. One of the things that ESSA does, though, is it basically states that once a student earns a modified diploma, we can no longer provide services and basically count them within our ADM. So that's an issue for some of our students. We have students in our community transition program that earn diplomas, and then we continue to serve them up until age 21. There's a little bit of conflict there. We're currently working on that. We have this year, as basically they said this year, there's nothing we need to do about it, but ultimately we're gonna have to make a determination on how we answer that. And really it's under Barb's leadership within our department, because that's where CTP calls or falls under, but we're gonna have to explore modified diploma, what that means, how we serve these students. Do we not issue a diploma, continue to serve, or issue a diploma later? Do we issue the diploma and just serve and not worry about how we identify them through our ADM? There's a couple clear questions that we're gonna have to formulate, and I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that as we continue to move forward in this process. And right now, we're really at the entry level.
And by law, we have to serve them through age 21.
Yes. Mhm.
And how many are we talking
Unless they
about?
have a modified diploma.
Well, if they have the modified diploma, we still have to serve them until they're age 21. We just
They
can't
just-
include them in
they-
our
we
count.
can't include them.
So we're not getting any money to pay for their
Go ahead,
education.
Barb.
Under ESSA,
Under ESSA,
no, it
no.
counts, a modified diploma now in the state of Oregon counts as high school completion.
You're done, so we
And you're
don't.
done.
And we don't have to put them in a community transitions program?
Well,
Yeah,
I apologize. Functionally, it's making it so that we can't, because we can't
Right.
do it. It's not that we don't have to, it's taking the option away where we would have been glad to supply those
Right.
services.
Well, I want to be clear, I think it's making messy. We haven't given up on that. We think the students that get served through CTP need that service, and that's something we're committed to try to find and make happen. We don't have a direct answer yet, but it's essential for our community and certain students within our community. So, Anna, I believe you had a question, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to know how many students we're talking about and what the total cost of those enrollments is.
You bet.
Ballpark.
Do you have an idea of the number?
So, you know what, I don't have current numbers right now. It's not a large number. I would say 10 to 15 kids that go on to our transition program at the most. That would be the upper end.
And we can follow up. You want cost from ODE to per student, or do you want an estimated cost of the program? I'm sorry,
An
which one?
estimated cost of what we would lose for those 10 to 15 students.
Got it. Excellent. The next one is, I wanted to follow up, actually, Mr. Rogers provided some testimony, but I wanted to share tonight. We've had issues, we've communicated this a little bit on the White Glove Tour. We actually looked at the Floyd Light Woods, and we had conversation about what's occurring there. And we do have issues. One of the things I wanted to communicate is our principal actually does a walkthrough, tries to do a walkthrough every day up through there. There's a number of different reasons, from violence, abuse that's occurring, and the concern that we have students that go through those woods every single day, drug use, paraphernalia, and a number of other different issues. But one of the things that occurred recently at about 6:30 in the morning, our principal was doing a walkthrough, and as he was walking through, he came across two individuals who were shooting up. And I don't know much more than that, but I know that his real worry and concern, well, what if students are walking in on this? What happens? What does that look like? So just want you to know that we've been in contact with the Portland Police about that, again, asking for assistance and help. We've been working with our maintenance department about that, possibly cleaning up more. Another issue we've had two of them, but one of them was just yesterday. 911 was called because of two individuals who were physically abusive to each other right outside of Cherry Park Elementary. So it is real in our community. It's something that we're trying to work with, but I wanted to make sure that the board was aware that is going on across our district, not just Floyd Light with those woods, although that seems to be an area that many different issues are coming to, but across our district in a whole, unfortunately, it's something that our staff and teachers and administrators and police are trying to help and serve. So just a reality I wanted to share in case you hear it as you're out in the community, because we're hearing it at the district office. The next one is House Bill 3267. Just in case you were not aware, this is another update that's going to have an impact on our district. House Bill 3267 basically states that for any individual, any student that does not meet a certain district's high school requirements, if they are either a foster child, homeless, a runaway, or a child of a military family, or migrant worker, excuse me, I'm going through the list here. If a district has above and beyond the state requirements for graduation, we can no longer require our requirements. We have to only require the state requirements. And obviously the concern there is if students have been bounced around and students haven't had a consistent process to earn credits, and they go in one district and they say you only need 24 credits to graduate, and then next thing you know they're in our district and now you need 25 credits, the concern and the hardship that could put on the students and families. So What that means, though, is in our district, we're going to have to look at our graduation requirements, because right now, we require 25 credits, and we require 2.0 GPA. So for individuals at our high school, if they follow under any one of these identifiers, they could now, they need an alternative route, right? So we are currently working with the high school on that. This does not come into play to January of 2018, so it is this year. But very well, we could be coming to, and not very well, we're going to have to come to the board to talk about some sort of alternative diploma. It could be, and these are no proposals yet, it could be that we just have our high school diploma and we also adopt the Oregon State diploma. And if you earn the Oregon State diploma credits, that's what you earn. So there's a number of different ways to look at it, but we need to put a work group together to make that plan. But it will take board action to change our diploma requirements and have another option.
And how are you able to track whether or not a child falls into those categories?
Well,
That was John's concern.
yeah,
Some I understand, but
yeah,
It's reported by the family.
yeah. Some of it's
self-reported.
much of it's
So
self-reported.
someone would have to come and say, I'm a migrant worker, or I'm homeless.
So there's not a way for you to know
Mm-hmm.
otherwise.
And we have identification, we identify our Title X McKinney-Vento kids.
Right.
And we have a process in place to do that, and we work very closely with DHS and
Okay.
identify students that are in the foster care system. And then migrant is self-reported, but we track that population as well.
It's the runaways that,
Yeah.
John's concern is someone who finds they're not going to graduate, but they can meet the state standards. Suddenly, their family reports they run away for a week to report them as a runaway so they can get
Oh,
state.
that seems rather complex and
I know it,
far-fetched.
that's what he thought.
So ultimately, again, at this point, it's just communication. We don't have an answer. We're going to have a board report for us to basically, my estimation is we're going to have to come to the board and ask for a different criteria around graduation to make sure that we meet this requirement, right? So,
It's not an alternative diploma. It is a diploma of the state of Oregon.
Right.
correct. The state of Oregon sets the requirements for graduation, then each district sets its, some are just exactly like the state of Oregon. The David Douglas School District has adopted diploma requirements of 25 credits and a 2-point versus 24 credits. That's really the difference.
And didn't we discuss an Oregon State diploma last year?
That was around Fur Ridge.
Yeah, but maybe we could use that as our model
Yeah, and that is part
and
of
have that all be the same thing in
Yeah.
the end?
that is part of the conversation. That's part of the conversation, yep, yeah. Next one was discussed a little bit this evening as well, is just transportation update. I just wanted to share with the board that, again, we did change times around transportation to solve a specific issue we had around bus shortage and driver shortage and the issue of getting students home and to school on time. So we've made those changes, but our intent is at the end of this month to form a committee to look at our transportation across the district and look at how we serve our community and serve the district, right? With the understanding that it could be a total shift, it could be a split, it could be, there's a lot of different things. Basically, the board knows we made the changes last year to survive. But with our shortage of bus drivers, if we would have stayed status quo, our buses would not be running, and we're still having issues right now with the density of our district and how that's changed around traffic patterns. But the intent, again, this year is to do a long-term study, take some of the data we have, at least a month worth. That's why we haven't started the committee yet, is we want to get at least a month's worth of data, and then really look at what are the options we can do to make sure that, Silka mentioned, that is something that's been brought to the table about looking at research around, you know, when is it best for elementary, when is it best for secondary, what does that look like? So I know that will be a point of the conversation, but more to come. I just wanted to remind the board where we're at with that. Very fun statement here is, if you notice in the back of the room, we have calligraphy. So if we have a break tonight or on your way out, different awards and activities, one of our programs, specifically, there's a first place award back there for Tina Ng, a second place for Audrey Hoon, honorable mentions for Julia Archer, Jillian Brown, Sarah Din, Juan Din, Christine Lee, Julia Ma, Tina Ng, and Vicky Tran. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to recognize and celebrate them for their hard work and some of the awards they have, and thank them for sharing with us at the board meeting. A few other quick We had auditors in our DO this week. They're gone already, so that's good. Excuse me, that's not good. That's, yeah, no.
They're finished being
They're finished, yeah. So seriously, it was great. Initial is no red flags, I'll say, but obviously they report, their obligation is to report to you, so there's really not anything I can say. But they do typically, when they exit, just kind of talk with Pat, hey, this is that, and at this point, we have no indications that there's anything that we're worried about or anything of that nature. But again, the full report will come back to the entire board. I just wanted to share that we had that. Also want to share that we're taking advantage, or we've been invited to, and we're exploring, and hopefully we can be involved in the Oregon Student Voice Initiative. Ultimately reached out through Chalkboard, is a student-led organization that empowers students to be authentic partners with education decision makers, and they're launching two things. One is a statewide survey that we're hoping to participate with our high school, and then specific also they visit to talk with delegation of students at the high school and kind of get some input from the high school students about different things. So very excited about that. It's not completely done yet, but we're hoping that we can continue and be part of that. It's basically come out, one of the reasons we got an invitation is our equity pilot work did last year around time and space and some of the things we've done there. So we're hoping. Kelly, I'm going to save you for last. Two other things. One is safe dividends. We just received an email today through our workman's comp insurance that we will be receiving dividends back. That's exciting anytime we get dividends back for two reasons. One is any kind of finances that can come back around insurance that go to classrooms and schools we love. And two is it shows that our employees are being safe and taking precautions and making sure they're not getting hurt at work, which obviously that's the last thing we want. So I don't have any details. It was just a real quick email, yay. And so when we know more, we'll let you know. And the final is a fun before I hand it over to Kelly, and Kelly's always fun as well. But we received an email for what's called Touchdown Backers. I'm trying to bring you guys different student information. Touchdown Backwards is a self-generated scholarship, and really they ask community members, ask teachers, administrators, hey, are you willing to donate money for every single touchdown or flat fee? And then at the end of the year, they give a scholarship to one student. This is specifically the football program I'm talking about, and that went out. But what they also shared is a quick write-up. Part of anyone that applies for the scholarship has to do an essay to communicate what does it mean to be a Scot. And it just they shared that with the entire staff this year, and I thought I'd read it for the board. I'm not going to read the whole letter. There's two paragraphs. So I'm starting in the middle of the paragraph. A Scot is the hardest worker in the room. I believe that in a school like David Douglas with so many opportunities for the student athlete, they all must be taken advantage of. David Douglas may not have the money of a private school, but I believe we have the best facilities of any high school in the state. David Douglas has a college and career center, a Scott Center, active and helpful counselors, new natural habitats and gardens, a new pool, new tennis courts, recently renovated gym, state-of-the-art football field and track, and by far the largest and most developed weight room in the state. I do my best to take advantage of all of the opportunities afforded to me, and I wake up determined to take advantage of the state-of-the-art weight room. That was his specific focus. And then jumping down to another paragraph. Lastly, as Scott embraces the diverse family around him/herself, David Douglas is the largest high school in the state with a vast range of languages and ethnicities. Something I love to do is run into new faces and have a great, comfortable conversation. I meet kids who have roots in all corners of the world. I have great friends from Mexico, Nigeria, Vietnam, and the Ukraine, to name a few. What I'm trying to say is that I believe that a Scot is not only part of the community, but is an active and has no prejudice towards anyone. A Scot loves and embraces teammates, classmates, teachers, and coaches, no matter their background. A Scot embraces differences rather than pointing them out as if they are weaknesses. And then I'll leave the rest. But it just, the young man who won the scholarship, that was part of his essay. And obviously for anyone in the audience or any board member, if you're interested in donating to this scholarship, please let me know, and I'd be happy to contact you. And then the last thing this evening, we have the obligation, but I see it as an opportunity, per state law, Oregon Revised Statute 327016, we're required to share a report of basically breakdown of ELL programs. And if you remember last year, some of them are on the board or some of them might have been here. We did that presentation. It was the one with the plot, the scattergram, and kind of showed some of our, so we did not get it on, I did not get it on the agenda this month, so, but I asked Kelly if she would take some time during the superintendent's report, just so we're meeting this opportunity to share with you a little bit about our ELL program and specifically meet the requirements of the law. But again, it's more to come after that. Thank you, Kelly.
So, thank you. I looked back on my report last year, and it was actually on September 15th that I presented to the school board, so we're like almost 1 year into the day. And what you're gonna see in, if I can advance this. Okay. Oh, here we go. Come in.
It went through them all.
Okay, so we have posted the report, we actually turn in data annually to the State Department, and then the state compiles all of the data from 197 districts, and they're required by statute to put this report out. So the report has been compiled by the Oregon Department of Education. We posted this on the district website, and we also posted links to last year's report that a lot of people looked at. There's a ton of data in there. And then this year, what they did is they have the report, it's been translated in Spanish, and then there's also a huge spreadsheet with a comparison by district, by each 197 districts. So tonight, I'm not going to go through the whole report, I'm going to save you, and I'm going to share some highlights. So this was the plot graph that Ken talked about that we shared last year, from last year's report. And part of House Bill 3499 was to analyze how each district is doing. We are a large district. We have over 2,000 ELLs, so we're one of the large bubbles. And I had the school board guess last year, and we were hoping that based on our needs index, which is high, we are at 87.1 needs. Our outcomes are also high. We're at a 92.3. So that is David Douglas right there in the top corner. So with this current report, and the report goes back to the 2015-2016 data. So that's almost 2 years ago. But what we wanted to share is that here are some highlights. So when the report was turned in, we had 22% of our students were current English language learners. That means they were being served in our ESL program. And then throughout the district, we had 21% of our student body was former English language learners. So we're either monitoring them for 4 years or they're post-monitor, okay? So when we look at our total K-12 population, 43% of our students at that given point in time when we pulled the data had been either in our program or touched by our program sometime. When I say our program, I mean any program in the state of Oregon. They have at some point in their educational career been touched by an ESL program. 74% of our active ELL learners are actually at the elementary school level. So that's the bulk of where our students are. In our ELL program, we have, I say, approximately 23 native language represented in our ELL program, but there's also a column that says other languages that could add on. When we look at our demographics and we talk about David Douglas as a whole,
attain proficiency. And if you'll notice, we have a high percentage of our kids exiting the program. And that's a big goal for us because we want them to be able to access all the different subject areas from middle school on to high school so that they can graduate on time. And I put the comparison of what the state average is. So in each of the next graphs, you're gonna see where David Douglas is at, but you're gonna see the comparison at the state level. Freshmen on track to graduate, so at the end of freshman year, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the definition of freshman on track is they have to have at least 6 credits completed in order to be on track to graduate. So here's another demographic. There's the David Douglas percentage, our current ELs versus our former ELs, and then how we compare to the state. Math growth percentile, so this one is a whole. I don't know how they pull it out of the index. When they look at the outcome index, I believe they're only looking at grades 6 through 8. So I'm not quite sure if this is just 6 through 8 or if it's 3 to 12. And I didn't get an answer or wasn't able to contact OBE about that file, but they're looking at this for our outcome index, and you'll see our kids compared to the state. 5-year cohort graduation rate for our ELLs. And post-secondary enrollment of our 4-year graduates. So our ELs who graduate within 4 years, how do they enroll in post-secondary education? So everything that has that little asterisk on the side, those are the indicators that the state looks at to determine our outcome. And I just wanted to say thank you publicly. I get to present, but it's really our staff, our teachers and our principals and our classified staff that work with our ELL kids and our families on a day-to-day basis. And they do that in an amazing way, and I think that the data shows that. Do we still have work to do? Yes, we do have work to do, but we will continue to improve and grow and be better. So.
Yay.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate that. And again, she mentioned I wanted to run out real quick and say thank you to our student body president, but the results are posted on the website as well. You probably started with that, so just in case. All right. With that said, Madam Chair, that's my report for this evening.
Kelly, do you have any idea, or Ken, I know you want to talk to him, like how many of those ELL students that are going on to higher education are participating in our Mount Hood college credit tuition stuff?
I don't know, but I'm sure that we can pull the data.
Yeah, are you looking for postgraduate, or are you looking for our current inside right now that are using earning
No,
credit?
I'm just wondering, yeah, like how many of those are ELL students? I'd just love to know, because a lot of times with English language learners at home, they don't necessarily know all of the opportunities that are available to them that David Douglas makes available. So I just wondered if we're actually reaching those parents and those youth.
Got it.
That's really where that's coming from.
Anything else? Okay, on to financial report. Pat.
GASB requirements, which of course make our financial statements look wonderful. And it looks fantastic right there because they are asking for PERS, actuarials to be included, and of course, we all know that we've changed rates in PERS, and so they will look continually worse because we do have to put that in for the two major things that I wanted to talk about tonight regarding the financial report is the general fund projected needs and balance. So way back when we did the adopted budget, we had estimated about $10.9 projects fund. So while it ended last year at 1.9, Lincoln Park really didn't get started until July. So the majority of the expenditure you will see in your next report. I don't usually do a report for July, August, and September just because we're loading staff and scrambling to hire teachers and get them in for our first kickoff in September. So we'll have all that information. Any questions?
On to the consent agenda.
I move approval of consent agenda item.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next is Board Superintendent Working Agreement. Do you
Sure,
want me to
I-
start? Do you want to start?
No, absolutely. So what this is basically, at our last board workshop, the facilitator went through with the board and kind of communicated the board's expectations to the superintendent, and then as a cabinet, we worked and talked about superintendent's expectations of the board, and it helped to communicate on how we're gonna work together. So all this is where we ended the meeting. His recommendation was rather than just let it sit, that you memorialize it, bring it to the board. I think we could have brought it as an action or an information, or there's a number of different ways to do it. We brought it as an action, but ultimately, this is a reflection of that work at our last workshop.
Ask Derek just to put it up on the board.
Oh, you bet. While he's doing that, I guess, are there questions, thoughts from any of the board members?
I was happy with the process.
I think it's starting point.
Yeah. We've never done this before, so you gotta start somewhere. It's like a warm-up period for this kind of thing.
Should have thought of it sooner. My apologies.
Yeah, it's on, you can see it.
They gotta warm up a little bit.
Good luck getting it lined up. Oh, look at that.
Oh.
If you want to look at it, look down here.
Okay.
I guess just to move forward with the ability then to just have comments about it, I think I'll move approval of the board superintendent working agreement.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, discussion, sorry.
Not just,
That's
I
what
mean, not even discussion, but just comments, and I appreciate
Yeah.
the opportunity. Just, again, I think it was a great opportunity to work together as a board, and as we've said, a starting point. Previous boards in this district haven't had this. There's been just a relationship that has existed, but I think a framework can only strengthen that relationship. Having set, I'll say guidelines, I know that previously I might have said boundaries, but having set guidelines that we're going to work together with the district on, it's only going to be a positive, so happy with the work that we did.
Anybody else want to comment, discuss?
I was, just to comment, because it's the longest serving board member, to me it was nice, because I've gone through many cycles of different board members, and never have we had a group that totally wanted to work on educating themselves and creating things like this. So it's really nice for me, because I've always advocated for some of this stuff, to have a total, everyone to be in agreement to want to do it.
Okay. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Up next is the, let me scooch back over here so I'm on the microphone. Superintendent's goals for 2017-18.
So I think this one's mine as well, Madam Chair. So in front of you Oh, this one's mine. In front of you, in your board packet, we sent, and then I sent it earlier as well, as for any feedback, concerns, thoughts, but obviously tonight's the opportunity to discuss that and get any other input or suggestions you have. Ultimately, 3 different areas under the current system around goals have to do with managerial, instruction, and political. And ultimately, I've written 3 goals with 6 subset under each of those. I guess my interest is hearing any feedback, hearing any thoughts. It's also same thing in the past. It's been either consent agenda, it could be an information item. We did it more of an action item based on the recommendation from the OSBA consultant, thinking that the board basically authorizes and said, this is what we're doing, making it public, so.
I have one.
So we need a motion so that we can move to discussion. So somebody want to make a motion?
I move we approve Superintendent Richardson's goals for the 2017-2020 timeframe.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now discussion. Go.
All right, so mine is around the Goal 1, Strategy 4, which is not surprising, where it says develop district level equity plan with a focus to communicate our district's focus on equitable practices. I'd like this framed a little bit differently. It reads to me, and this may not be your intent, is that we're doing equity and we just need to communicate it. And while that may be true, under, you know, we don't have a plan yet. We're not really sure how we measure. So communication is separate to me than actually having a plan. I'd like it to read something more like having, developing the plan in conjunction with impacted communities, the folks who've been coming here, you know, time after time, students, which I also heard today, and that those outcomes are very measurable and clear. So I think that needs to be there. Communication to me is a separate issue. I don't know, maybe I can help wordsmith what I mean later.
Yeah, well, and I can take a stab at it as well. but
Okay,
Yeah, you
yeah.
bet.
Does that make sense to everybody? Kyle's kind of like, what?
I'm just saying, so do you want a motion to suspend voting?
The table.
To table that particular,
He's making a face. Well, we have to do it next meeting if we table.
So I would just recommend that you don't table, but you postpone.
Postpone.
Because there's a difference between those two things, right?
okay,
We can get into it if you want, but postpone until a definite date, which would be the next meeting.
okay.
So is that,
I would like to postpone.
you move that we?
I would like to move, I would like to, Robert's rules, I would like to move that we postpone that until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay,
Okay,
a little discussion for that one. So,
Yeah,
so
we're in
we can
discussion.
continue to discuss,
I-
because the thing is, we just gave him one correction, but if anybody wants something else in
Absolutely.
here,
That's what I was
then
thinking.
we need to get that going too.
Please.
So, I have a question. Mr. Richardson, is the goals that you have, you know, 1 through 4, or 3, excuse me, is that in a particular order of importance to you, or is it just random?
It's just following the system, the way it was outlined, the way the system's outlined in previous boards, 1, 2, and 3. So it's not specifically, I think different items in different areas have higher value to me. But as far as the overall, not necessarily. It just kind of depends. Each one of them has different. But ultimately, the way you see it presented to you is under the system of 1, 2, and 3. That's just the way it was designed.
Okay. Not that I have any particular instruction for you or my wish or anything, because I think it's fine. I guess my thing is there's some pretty heavy goals here, and it'd be great if they could all be achieved, you know, at 100%. But recognizing that you have lots of responsibilities, I guess I'd just say, make sure you please use your staff and to accomplish the goals, which I'm sure you do, because I know you allocate your responsibilities out and delegate well.
So, thank you, Bryce. Well, we're a team. They've already seen these goals. They know what our charge is and the direction, although they're not approved yet. I'm sure there'll be changes. We already know one. But overall, the concepts we've already had conversations about and started developing cabinet goals, if you will, and then as department leaders, each one of those will have goals, or they're formulating goals currently that somewhat fall within these. Again, at this point, they don't have those because we don't have these. It's one step at a time, but we've already started those conversations about how do we meet these.
Good.
Okay, so any other discussion?
I just want to underscore a couple components of this for the benefit of our community. I just want to look at goal number 1, 5 on workforce equity. I know we heard testimony earlier about the importance of diversifying our workforce. Workforce equity is a part of this goal. I want to make that just explicit. I think that's wonderful. For section number 2 on instruction, numbers 4 and 5, number 4 on culturally responsive teaching and trauma-informed practices, and number 5 really just affirming the impact of positive climate for staff on student achievement, I think is excellent. So I just want to give accolades to you and to those that did the work to compile these goals. I think they work well together. I think they're very timely. They're obviously research driven. I think they're wonderful. So thank you.
Have a couple of updates as well. Overall, I thought it was really thoughtful and just a couple suggestions, mainly for clarity purposes. So for goal 1 on 6, in thinking of facility planning, I think another key component of that is obviously the financial planning and some of the conversations that we've been having around potential bonds or other funding mechanisms. And so I would just consider making that a little bit more explicit, that it's facility and financial planning around making sure that we are doing what we can to meet those goals around infrastructure and enrollment needs. And the last sentence, City of Portland plans for growth, I think to me, obviously that's a comp plan, but I do think regional planning efforts, and so really looking at metro or other districts, even countywide, as we know that our population is constantly moving, would also be helpful to refer to, since that definitely impacts the district here, even though we are fully within City of Portland boundaries. I do like goal 2 around student achievement, but I do think that maybe 4, or maybe an additional subset around overall student achievement and healthy outcomes, and really thinking of our healthcare services, particularly at our early learning hubs, and making sure that we're really not only just focused on student achievement, but also all the things that our district really has to offer to make that a comprehensive learning and community environment. And so some language around just the healthcare or additional kind of services or interventions as being something that we are wanting to also have students meet benchmarks in, because we know healthcare outcomes really impact their achievement in the classroom. And then the last piece, just a kudos mainly, I really liked the number 3 on 3, family and community engagement. I think, and this was another question I had for Christine, I haven't been able to check in with you about in terms of committees from our board, but it sounds like here, to really consider a new district-wide committee on family engagement. I think that's a great idea. I know that you have been really good about sharing your own family engagement across districts, or across schools. I've really appreciated that. I know that there's a lot of really, really great work already happening, and so I'm excited to see how that will look. But overall, this is exciting, so thank you.
Comment.
Thank you, Andrea.
Only that with the requested changes, that if possible, we can have it before the packet. Just as Chair Larson pointed out, we have to vote on this next time.
Mm-hmm.
So if there could just be some cushion, just for everybody, for anybody that's requested a change, and then for those of us that could see those changes, would be appreciated.
And just for the benefit of the folks that
Otherwise, we'll
are.
pause the meeting and just read for a while.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
teasing you, no problem. Seriously, I'll send it in advance like I did before, and then it would, no, I will. Yep. I will take a stab at it, and by mid-next week, you guys will have it to review and give feedback.
And one of the things that we discussed as a board was having board goals internally for ourselves. And so I just think it's wonderful that we have excellent goals that our superintendent has put together for himself and for the cabinet, which I know you'll participate in. And I look forward to developing board level goals as well, because I feel like we need accountability all around, including ourselves. So I'm looking forward to that process.
Just match up some dates.
Yep. We need those dates.
That seems to be our problem, is matching up dates.
Okay, so done with comments and discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
For a postponement?
Oh, for,
For a postponement until next meeting.
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next item on the agenda is resolution declaring a portion of the Elks property as surplus. Pat? Oh, gosh, yes, I'm so sorry. So can I get a motion to declare this portion of the Elks property as surplus?
After discussing this for almost 2 years with people, I would be happy to move to accept the resolution to declare the 2 acres, approximately 2 acres of the Elks property as surplus.
Okay, second? Second. Okay. It's been moved and seconded, so we can discuss.
No problem.
Anybody want to discuss?
Cut and dry.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. On to the next thing on the list. Enrollment update. Candy.
Okay. So this evening, Lori has placed a packet in front of you at all of your places called District Enrollment that I will go over. The packet contains enrollment from day 1 up to today. And not sure if you had much time to peruse that, but you may have noticed on day 1, we had a negative 6.2% in our enrollment. And I will tell you that sent a little bit of a panic our way on day 1. But the great news is day 2, it was cut in half. So we're making the assumption that the really, really smoky conditions played a huge role in that.
Do you think also the fact that the last few years we have not gone to school on Tuesday?
You know,
That some parents might have been confused, because I actually had to look on the calendar to verify which day we were starting.
Good point, good point. It could have been that. It also could have been the fact that we did have a neighboring district that was closing early that day, and sometimes there's confusion just because they're adjacent to us, that in which district, that we might have been closed that day, or families might have just felt that it was safer to keep their kids at home and not deal with the smoke. So the great news is that changed day 2. The unfortunate news, though, however, similar to last year, we are down in enrollment. So if you can just take a look at elementary, and this is our top page, day 8, at least it's my top page, underneath the top page, sorry. Second page, the back of the top page. We are down by about 213 students in elementary and 23 students at the high school. So again, our elementary numbers are much lower are going down at a higher rate than our secondary levels. Middle school, we are up by 19 students, so that is great. But overall, we're down about 2.1% in enrollment, so 217 students as of today. We do, though, have a couple of what we call hot spots, because with those numbers that you're seeing, we have a lot of really, really, really nice class sizes. And when I say nice, I mean lower. That's wonderful. Not so wonderful on our budget, but wonderful for kids and teachers. But we do have a few hot spots that we're working on right now. So kinder is always hard to predict, and we try to look at trends, but you just never know what's going to happen there. So we do have a couple of hot spots, higher spots, one being at West Palhurst. And so what Andy Long and I have been working on is how to kind of even those out a bit, because we have some low spots in kinder. So we're currently working on busing some of the kinder students at West over to Ventura Park. And the great news is Ventura is an equally fabulous building and school as West, and we'll get a high-class education, just like they would at West. So we're working on that currently. We're also keeping an eye on, we have some higher sizes at Mill Park in their kinder. And then we also have a high spot at Cherry Park in 4th grade that we are busing some kiddos over to Mill Park currently. So it's what we do every year. We look at class sizes. We try to balance as much as possible and what's reasonable for our families. And so we'll just continue to monitor those as we hopefully grow in the next week here or so. But again, the great news is that it is lower class sizes all across. But it's again concerning to our budget. So that is the update, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those.
Anybody got any questions, comments?
Question, and I think it's more Barb's department with our homeless. When we have people reporting homeless, are they saying why they're suddenly homeless? Are we getting any kind of?
Florence, who is our homeless liaison, is here, so.
So after listening to conversations last spring here at
Yeah.
the meetings, when I redid the McKinney-Vento referral form that gets filled out at the building level, if counselors are the first point of contact or if I'm filling it out, I did add a question to ask families if it was due to a no-cause eviction. That seemed to be a conversation that kept coming up, and we didn't really have numbers. What I'm finding in the students that are identified so far, about 15 to 20% of them were due to no-cause evictions. As far as reasons why they are homeless, that's part of the identification process. So it's a narrative on each student who gets identified as to, excuse me, as to how they ended up in that situation. And that's how I decide if it meets the criteria of the McKinney-Vento laws to be identified as a student experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, I'm more, kind of interested in the no-cause evictions, the huge rent increases. Since I'm working on the housing issues, it's so difficult to get the data. Right now, our schools are about the only place where we're really capturing some data. And it's helpful when I'm working with the city or potentially the county to get that info.
I'll have some information from those, and we can go through and synthesize the data and kind of figure out where things land. Last year's students, although we don't know what was caused due to housing specifically, in rent increases and no-cause evictions, we ended up identifying and reporting 595 students. So a little over, right around 6% of our population, 5.9%, depending which number we're looking at. But it is a significant increase from previous years. I attribute that partly to a more aggressive identification. Counselors, parents, we did some communications out in the community in really making sure we were supporting our students.
Well, hopefully you can work with Central City Concern when they build theirs and opens next year. And I just heard from Habitat Humanity, they are building those condos on Cherry Blossom. They will be building 31 and 39 condos, family units, 3 to 4 bedrooms. So that is going through. They did get the city funding to do it. So we have a couple of things coming that might help some of our families.
Anybody else have any questions or comment about the enrollment report? No? Okay, on to inter-district transfer recap, which is also Candy.
Which is also me, thank you, yes. So also, in your packets, you'll find a 2-page document that recaps our inter-district numbers this year. Just as a reminder, by law, the board determines in the spring the number of students that we release and the number of students that we accept. And so that number, again, was determined to be 50 in spring of last year. Our process, it opens in mid-April and it closes August 1st, just to kind of give you an idea of the timeline. And so the very top page on that 2-page document, it shows the numbers for families who met the original deadline of August 1st. So you can see the date on there is August 7th, 2017. So the students in was 32 at that time, and I'll go into where we're at now, which is a different number. So at that point, we did not have to, what I'll call, activate a lottery system because we were still under what we allowed to accept in. I did, though, underneath that indicate what our open enrollment numbers are, because essentially that's another transfer process. So, and that's where we will approve students from other districts to really, even though not physically, but to become a resident. So they can continue in our system for the remainder of their educational career. That is at 118 students. So you can kind of go down and see the seniors. We don't. That's just an automatic in, so they were not in our count. And then going down, our students out, and at that point in time was 57 students out. And just to be clear, we gave priority to continuing students, so any kids who were mid-year moves, and then their siblings. We try really hard to give families the opportunity to keep siblings together. And so below that, at the very bottom of the page, you can see students in and students out, which district they were coming from or going to. And then if you turn to the next page in the inter-district transfer recap, you can see the date changed. That was at a point in time last week, so we could get that into the packet. There were even a couple more changes since then, but this page is, as of now, our final numbers on how we ended. So again, just a reminder, under the interdistrict transfer law, there is a provision in there that it's called a hardship. And so basically, if a family does not meet that deadline, but they have reasons that they still are asking to either come in or be released, then we are able under the law to approve that. Some of the hardships that the law allows, just to kind of be specific, are really pointed toward if a student has a death of a parent. That would be considered obviously a hardship. Access to safe and affordable childcare is considered a hardship. Homelessness, we were just talking about, hardship. And then there are a few others, medical conditions, military deployment. So there's about 6 or 7 that if in conversation that's what we find or what they are telling us, then we're able to approve it outside of the timeline. So you can see that changed things up a bit. So currently, we were able to allow in 53 students, so 53 plus the continuing of the 118 in open enrollment. And then going out, that also changed a bit to 94 out based on hardships. And again, you can kind of see, where they're going to below and coming from. And just so you know, we continue to get those all year long. And so they go through the process, and I make personal contact with them, and then we follow the law. And so these numbers could fluctuate a little bit more as the year goes on. But as of now, those are our current numbers for interdistricts.
Questions or comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question. It seems like there are a large number of Russian-speaking families or families that are wanting to move into the immersion
That is correct.
program. I'm wondering if you're seeing the same in other language groups, like the Somali immersion program.
You know, I did not. Those may have, and I may defer to Lori, because those may have even been within the original where they didn't go into the lottery. So I didn't know those as intimately as the ones who didn't make it and then I spoke to. So, so my answer is not nearly, if at all, but not nearly as much as the Russian immersion.
So that's definitely a draw that
Correct.
Yes has.
Correct. And yes, and my understanding is in order to even keep that program running, there was a lot of recruiting going on, and that was impactful.
It's a very popular one.
Yeah.
May I? So two things. First, along those lines, because I am not on the charter school committee, because we don't have that, I have a question for the cabinet. Has the application for a charter school, Russian immersion charter school, come back ever?
No, not since the one,
The last time?
the group that came before us prior.
Okay.
They have not applied, and to my knowledge, they haven't applied anywhere else, though I can check at the state.
Could you, curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And then, Candy, where are we at on the laws being, I want to say it right, on the laws being made maybe more student-friendly? The comparison between open enrollment and inter-district transfer, I mean, like, we're bound.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get back to where we actually get to do kind of what's best, or are we gonna have to keep following the law, and for how long?
Well, yes, I will answer that. I will tell you that last year, the law did I'll call it open up a bit.
Yep.
Because prior to that, really, it was just an emergency situation where there was a direct threat of harm to the student, and that was really the only way.
Everything else was hard enough.
Right, and so within the new, where they opened it up a bit, those, I read off 4 or 5 of them. There's a couple more, but really what it did, what I felt last year and this year too, it allowed me to try to help families and try to give them what they need and want for their families within the law. So to me, it definitely opened it up to where, right, to there was some more interpretation and more flexibility.
And then one more, I apologize, is there more, there's always more that can be done. Is there more that reasonably can be done to get to people so that they understand the date deadlines? let me phrase it this way.
Yes.
Would you look at that and get back to me?
I will.
That
I
instead of
will.
putting you on the spot right now.
We-
Maybe that's,
Yeah.
you hit that date deadline and you're out of luck.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. There's not as many of those as there are hardships. To me, that's a hardship. And so I know in our office, we've talked about that. What are some things we can do to improve the process so that it is more family friendly? But I will get back to you on that.
Did you have any more, Stephanie? I didn't ask you if you were done
I'm done.
before I switched to Kyle, so I thought I better ask.
Just one question. In the inter-district transfers, yeah, with the open enrollment, the money follows the kids. Inter-district transfers, it's always been up to the school to release funds. Does this still, say a student wants to go from PPS here, does PPS still get to determine whether to release funds? I guess that's what.
I believe when they release the student, it releases the funds. So
correct.
it still is a
Funds follow.
two-way.
So it's not where before they would, but
No.
basically, they've got to release the student.
It's a two-way situation.
yeah,
So
that's
it
still-
starts with the home district to release, and then the receiving also has to accept.
No, I know that,
Yeah,
but
with
it's still,
the funding.
they still may run into a problem with the district not wanting to release students. Technically, they
Yes,
could.
they they have to follow the exact same process that we do by law.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the first reading of Board Policy BFE. This was suggested by OSBA. It is in your packet, and it's administration in the absence of policy. A policy on no policy. So this is a policy which basically states that if there's no policy in place, then the superintendent will act and then he'll tell us what happened, and maybe we might make more policies, who knows? So this is a first reading for this, so is there any questions or comments or?
I move that we approve this policy.
We're not
Oh.
to it yet. It's first reading.
We don't have to.
First reading,
next
dang
time.
it. So we have to wait a whole month to vote on this policy in the absence of policy?
We don't technically have to, we could agree to do it tonight.
You can move that we move to second reading.
I move that we move to second reading of this sentence policy.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, all those, so you want to discuss?
I will say I completely agree because we talked about this.
Yeah.
I don't think, I apologize if anybody does feel they need extra time, and I'm certainly open to hear that, but we discussed what this policy's purpose was, and I think it's very valuable, and I'm glad that you moved, and we might as well.
So you
And
guys-
second, both. How about that? Double high five.
Okay. So, end of discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now, we have on the table,
Just a comment, look at that, as soon as I'm not in the policy committee, this stuff starts flying.
That's because you spent so much time picking up policies.
so now we're at second reading of Board Policy BFE, Administration in the Absence of Policy.
I move approval of policy BFE.
I second that.
Okay, discussion? Anybody want to talk about that? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, we're done with that. We are on to other business, and before I let anybody else go at other business, I got a whole slate of other business written out here. I know, poor Frida can see it all here.
She was hiding it.
I was hiding it, yes, it was on the second page. But I can cross one off. So there. So the first thing that I would like for us to talk about is a discussion of adding a second meeting each month, just a standing second meeting that we would have there for workshops or presentations. And this has been, I mean, I'm presenting this as there's been an interest. And then if for some reason we didn't need to meet, we would cancel it. So let's discuss that.
I would offer, I am not opposed to the idea whatsoever. My request would be that there is one meeting that is the focus of action items, if possible.
Right.
And that's a personal request on my end, travel, and I promise that I will keep up to date if I miss any of the other meetings with minutes, contact with my fellow board members, and awareness of what was discussed. But if this is a route that we choose to go, certainly I'm in no way would be offended if action items appeared at both, but if it was possible to have a functional informational
Kind of a
meeting.
business meeting and
If that's
a
possible.
workshop,
I
educational
certainly, I would
meeting.
absolutely defer to board leadership, and
Historically, that's how it used to be done. One meeting would be strictly business, mainly action. The next one, if you had something that needed to get voted on, you voted on it, but otherwise it was informational, that's when presentations were given by different cabinets or whatever in the past.
And why did that change, Kyle?
when we switched superintendents one time ago, not this time, but the previous time.
And we had some board chairs who.
Yeah, there was it
who
was before I was on the
agreed.
board.
Oh, okay.
The
It's not your
superintendent's
fault.
office. Yeah,
All
this-
right.
well,
The
no, the
people who did it are
superintendent's office
gone.
and the board at that time
Uh-huh.
just decided that they could get by with one meeting.
Not the board chair and vice
Or-
chair.
That's true. Yeah, I good correction.
It was a interesting fact that it suddenly disappeared.
Yeah, I do think that you're going to hear this over and over from me around transparency and engagement, and I think that would actually allow us to have meetings that are more productive for community engagement.
Again, like I said, absolutely not opposed whatsoever, just with the one request that if due to travel, I'm not here.
Well, it worked well to do all the business mainly in one and then the information more in the other.
Not that I would be requesting a pass not to be at a board meeting, that's crazy talk.
I guess I would be interested to hear from those who have young children still at home, if that, having 2 meetings would present an undue hardship on you and being able to get to the meetings and working and everything else that you're doing. I think it's, your opinion of having the 2 meetings would be very valuable in my making a decision on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Frida and I talked about kind of the history of how these meetings used to be run. And my idea would be, actually it would help me to maximize time with my kids, because we would have 2 shorter meetings in theory, instead of 1 super long meeting where I don't see my kids all day. We have 2 shorter meetings. I can still make it home for bedtime. So, it's just a preference, personal preference. I think it could also be helpful for organizational purposes to separate the presentations from the action items. So I think it actually would be beneficial overall.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And if we move on to an issue around providing childcare at some point to support engagement and support the board that has young children, that would certainly help too, because I can't keep my kids here until sometimes 10 o'clock if we have a very important, with a lot of community discussion meeting. So I agree.
Anybody else? I think for me, it would actually be a little trickier. I think I would have to consider childcare more. But I definitely see the point of wanting to have more discussions with folks. And so I think if that's the direction folks want to go, I will say I think it makes me a little nervous, given that I'm not quite sure where that childcare is going to come from on my end. But, certainly open to making sure that we have that time.
Can we put restrictions on the time that we, are going to meet? Because I'm like Kyle, I see this as a beneficial item, and if we could restrict business items to business meeting, but I can kind of see the meetings maybe morphing over into a long meeting also.
Two long meetings a
I will
month
say,
instead of 2 short ones?
I'm just afraid that might happen.
Yeah, as I watched the board when that was the case, I'm just going to say I don't remember very many short meetings.
Well, I have that concern as well, and I think that for the business meeting, it just starts and it ends when it ends, but for the other meeting, which I don't know what we call the non-business meeting.
We call it a special meeting.
Special
is what we
meeting.
used to call
The
it.
special meeting, if we have a docket of things that are getting presented, then
Time limits.
yeah, this presentation gets 20 minutes, this presentation gets an hour. We're done in 2 hours, whatever, try and have a guideline of 2 hours or whatever we want to pick and try and fit it into that, but knowing that occasionally it might go over. But it does make it harder for people with children at home. My child's not at an age where she needs childcare, but I still want to be home when she's ready to go to bed.
Are we able to move the exec session to the special meeting time so that we start this meeting earlier? We can start this meeting at 6 and then start the special meeting at 6 also with the exec session and then the last hour's presentations?
Yes,
The answer is
absolutely.
yes, we can do
Absolutely.
that.
We can put exec session anytime we want.
It used to be after, it was never before.
Okay.
The past. I think the concern, now for me, since I'm retired, but for people who work is we have now where people have trouble getting to 6 for the exec section, which isn't as big a deal as being late for the regular meeting and missing votes and not having a quorum. So you have to think about time and people who work and can they get here on time. So with the
We do like a 6:30 start then?
I'm not working, so you guys are the ones that work, so
we
your
can not let it,
flexibility is more important.
We have to make it community accessible too for working people.
Yeah, and I guess I get nervous about that exact point for folks who are working, if we're asking them to come then twice a month for meetings. And I know myself personally, I work downtown, so it would be me taking that commute time twice, dropping my kid off before coming here. I think that would be difficult.
Yep. I guess the last thing that I'll say, because like I said, I'm open to it. I voiced my concerns. It's not like we can't change back. So we through we through board leadership can schedule a meeting anytime.
You could also leave an option. In the past, we kind of kept Thursdays as board things if we had to, like right now, trying to coordinate schedules. We usually picked a Thursday because people tried to keep the Thursday evenings open. You could choose to have one meeting and then with the intent that whatever you're picking, the fourth Thursday or whatever, that's for special meetings, and then based on leadership or requests, it doesn't mean it has to be every month. You could kind of do that too. You could be all sorts of ways to it.
I think that's a good idea, because we would sort of be easing into the idea of doing that, and without having to make an official declaration that we're gonna meet twice a month, and, you know, that's the way it is.
And
But
see, I was so used to meeting twice a month, so it doesn't matter to me, but.
Logistically, it presents, you know, a bit of a problem, I know, for those of us that travel a little bit, or a lot.
Absolutely do our best, right? I mean, that's,
But, so you can be flexible about it, on what you want to do.
I guess let's ask this then. What, again, just stating that I don't remember board meetings going short when there were 2 a month. What would be an ideal time for those that have that opportunity to go home and be with their kids? When would we be looking for these things to start and end? Ballpark, doesn't matter.
Ballpark. I mean, I could see anything from 5:30 to 7:30, 6 to 8. For the general one, 6:30 to 8:30, I think,
So if we could target an 8:30
end time.
end time. I mean, you guys can
6 is
discuss
hard
that.
for me to get here, because usually I try and get home from work and there's only, I mean, I'd prefer to fix my kid a dinner instead of buying Baja Fresh every week. You know, so that presents a little problem for me, but I mean, she can eat Baja Fresh, you know, if she has to. But yeah, I mean, I can be flexible, I just have to make sure I leave work. I'm the one that's usually late for things. I'm usually one that gets here like 5 to 10 minutes.
1 month of a trial run and see how it feels, without having to commit to doing it forever.
So, in thinking about 1 month, you all have a calendar in your packet, so handy, that has the board meetings. They're in here somewhere.
October 19th.
It's a colorful sheet, I do know that. I put it somewhere.
Or we have this beautiful David
Well,
Douglas
this
calendar.
one has
That is a,
I know, I saw mine earlier tonight. So, so when we look at the calendar, this is September, so October, our meeting's been moved to the 3rd Thursday for some reason.
That's
That you
tradition.
probably know.
Yeah, the tradition is the day, I'm sorry, I'm not reading glasses, but the 13th is the state in-service day.
Okay.
So they moved the varsity football game to the 12th. So
Gotcha.
that's,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be that way, that's just been the way it is, so.
So the question is, if we did this in October, would you want to meet on the 5th and the 19th, or would you want to do it in November, which is just as bad because the holiday's there?
I think 5th and 19th,
The 5th and 19th?
to me.
I would just request that the 19th is the business meeting,
Okay.
if possible. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I certainly defer.
I think that's a great idea, since it's already on the calendar.
October?
Yeah.
In October, okay.
October. So October 5th, we'll have a supplemental board meeting is what we're
And
calling
exec
this.
session, can we combine those?
That messes with our negotiations.
Does it?
Well, no, she's got.
It's one of the
this
days
sec-
proposed.
It's one of the days proposed, so it's the 5th, but that's okay. We'll just want to.
Okay, so we're gonna do a supplemental session, and then you propose to do exec session at the beginning for the first hour. Okay, and so what time do we wanna start?
So I will, I'm just letting you, don't set it on mine because it's not, I know for sure I will be taking a flight home that day. I will not be here before normal start time of executive session, so.
Okay.
But you can certainly do that and fill me in.
Can everybody do 6, 6:30? What works?
6 to 8 is good.
6 to 8?
Yeah, to me, it's less of an issue of time and more of an issue of child support, childcare support, so I just have to work it out. Yes.
And I actually, it looks like I am not available on the 5th.
Okay.
It would be
Already
Vegas.
confirmed.
Okay.
Event. I don't think so.
Okay.
And then just the last, I know I said I didn't have any more comments, but I'm not sure that everybody remembers or knows. Because now there's 2 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Don't miss 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Right, that triggers certain things, and just don't miss 3 in a row.
Well, then now I'm concerned because I'm going to be out of the country on the 19th.
Which, if you're letting us know ahead of time,
This
it's
is-
never going to
is
happen.
not showing up
I
for-
guess. 'cause
This is
yeah,
not showing up in no notice.
Yeah, it's because it's abandonment.
'Cause you're abandoning
and
your
you're allowing
position.
the board to decide whether you're here. Which I will tell you, if you're letting us know, I mean, abandonment is no contact. But that's not how the law is written. So just ensure that you are in contact with board leadership if there's ever a chance that you're gonna miss the 3rd one, right? Just, I mean, because that's the concern, right? Because you could miss the business one, only miss one, or excuse me, you could miss the
Right, miss
supplemental.
one business
You're only missing one business one, and all of a sudden that's 3. That is technically 3 meetings. So I would just rely on board leadership to accept that potentially we as a board could, because it's actually the law, it's not our rule.
Right. Well, and I think even further than that, I think it's important to not miss regardless of whether there's a
Right.
law or not.
Right.
And so
Oh,
I would get
absolutely.
concerned about just my capacity, right? If I know that there are things I am already scheduling out in December. And so, you know, I think it's gonna be difficult for me to tell whether or not this is gonna work with my schedule if I already know I'm basically missing all of next month.
Yeah.
And then we have holidays.
You shouldn't be traveling internationally.
Well, and again, we're
Shouldn't
trying
have
it,
bought my
right?
ticket.
Let's see if, let's
Yeah,
give it
it's
a go.
just a
But just
trial.
please contact board leadership if there's
Yeah,
a chance.
yeah,
that
and that's kind of for everything. If we have a meeting scheduled, a workshop scheduled, something scheduled, and you're not gonna be there, you need to contact board leadership and just let us know. Or if you're gonna be half-hour late, that would be awesome to know as well.
And you're fine with just an email, is that okay? Or text,
Yeah,
or call?
fine or text. Email or text is fine.
Text is actually usually better because everybody always carries their phone versus email. You're not always got the email.
But if you could, if you're gonna text, if you could text me and Ken, because if you're texting me like 20 minutes before the meeting starts telling me you're gonna be late, I might be late as well
Happy to.
for executive session, and then then we're both gone.
I got it.
So that happens. So we're gonna have a supplemental meeting on October 5th, exec session from 6 to 7. And then the next question is from 7 to 8, what's the plan?
So during board member reports, I was going to request a presentation on dress codes.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
And Candy, did you have a usual report you usually give in October?
Yep, the October staffing report.
Okay,
So I
so
was
could we have
planning
that
on
on the 5th, even though,
You have time to
Sure.
do you have time to get it ready?
Yes, I
Okay.
will make that happen. Well, oh gosh, wait a minute. It's really let me look at the calendar, because our HR department is currently working on compiling all the most recent hires, getting them into the system, and I usually ask for the report at least a week before so that I can then start putting that
That
together.
only
So,
gives you a week to.
well, I'm okay on my end.
Yeah.
I'm worried about on their
Okay.
end, so I'd have to probably get back to you on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. And do we have any other normal October reports that aren't action items that,
Yeah.
and in the supplemental meeting, well, I mean, I know we're trying this out, so in a regular board meeting, we have like superintendent's report, financial report, do we move those to the supplemental meeting?
My request is that we don't, unless the financial report, no. A financial update, the opportunity for the finance department to give an update. And again, it's not my choice.
Okay.
But a financial report would be the business meeting.
Okay.
A financial update, certainly at any time, but, I mean, because she could send it to us at any time, so, in that, and superintendent's report, I mean, if there's something short and of note, why not?
Okay.
Not to burden you double, but
And then
You don't mind.
if we have extra time, maybe Barb could give us an update on the student-based health center and the changes we
Yeah,
requested.
that's what I was gonna ask, yeah.
I won't be here on the 5th. I'm in Eugene at a special ed administrators conference.
Okay.
So I'd be glad to do it on the 19th. But I can do it the next special meeting.
Okay. Do we have any other special topics? I mean,
We usually
Can
do
we-
SBAC
SBAC? Oh,
in August.
it
in
won't be ready by
October.
then?
No, it doesn't get out
Okay.
until later.
Can we maybe send out some emails and request some ideas for presentations
Yeah.
that day?
Although I think that an hour on this issue actually could be really,
Well,
I'd like to ask a
think
lot of
that's a lot.
questions. If we're gonna have like Oregon Now come in and talk about, you know, how this model works and how it's worked in other places, I'd like to be able to have
Okay.
ample opportunity for discussion.
I think that sounds fine, and also, since we're trying this out, I don't want to pack the agenda and then have us be here until 10 PM.
I would plan on ending early, because it's gonna go longer than.
Yeah, it's going to go longer than what we think. Okay,
It is.
so,
And I just wanna make sure we're doing a regular public meeting notice.
yeah, Lori will put that out for us.
Yeah, just, yeah, making sure.
Okay. Anything else on that topic for today?
Madam Chair, may I? The one other item, and obviously not for the 5th, but the board, I believe, had a discussion about further workshops as well. So if a second Tuesday, or third Thursday or something, that could be that opportunity as well. Because there's still the outstanding communication about a board operating agreement, and we haven't landed on a date for that. We've been doing the Google Docs and Google Calendars. Again, I don't think it's something to talk about with the 5th, but down the road, thinking about that, I believe the board talked about communicating and learning together, and going through some of that. So just a reminder on the workshop idea as well, could fall in there. And I don't know if that was your idea on
Yeah,
when you're
I think-
thinking
yes,
that,
I
okay,
think that's a catch-all hour for us to fill, yeah.
help with that as well.
So, when we first started this discussion, I thought maybe it was just a discussion to talk about the possibility. Is this something we need to vote on, about the supplemental meeting?
It sounds like board leadership made the decision last time, so
They did when they
I
stopped
think
to,
it's-
it just happened.
I think it's done.
Almost down.
I don't think we have to vote on it. I think that we just schedule it, or do you think we have to vote on it?
No,
You're the one that knows more.
you have the ability to
Okay.
schedule a meeting anytime. I do have a comment, though.
Okay,
When you schedule the next meeting, we made a motion to move the superintendent's goals to the next meeting. We did not move them to the meeting on the 19th. So, I have no problem, as I didn't ask for any updates. I'm certain that I'll see the updates in time. So we either need to postpone them at the next meeting, or you need to have it on the agenda to vote for them. So just be aware, because we did move them to the next
meeting.
My bad. I should have said
But,
Should've said
but-
the 19th.
But it would be fine, because then they are approved earlier. So
Yeah,
you would-
Yeah, that's true.
But then can you have a shorter window?
He said he was gonna have them out.
It's gonna be great. So
Handled.
Done.
Okay, okay. Okay, I can mark that off my long list of things. We briefly talked about the National School Board Association meeting in April, and we decided as a group not to attend that. I just wanted to verify that that's good with everybody. So I will check that off my list.
If I may say, I believe those of you that have attended, and actually I believe anybody, I don't think you have to attend to download the app, which has all the sessions, which has all the information.
Yeah, you
And
can
it has
download the app.
contact numbers for the presenters if you had a
And
question, so.
Sometimes they upload their PowerPoint presentations and
literally, like,
everything.
Everything's there, so
So-
not being there, you could still be there-ish.
Yeah.
And does that leave some money in our budget for childcare? I'm just gonna keep bringing it up.
Pat do some analysis for us.
Yeah. We're not going anywhere, so.
The OSB, the Oregon School Board Association Conference, is in November, and Lori requested that everybody let her know. She put a form in our packets where you just write your name and what things you're doing. Usually we, as a group, our school board and whatever cabinet members are there, we usually go to lunch together off-site. And
It's a
not.
little less expensive.
It's a little less expensive than that lunch they present there, and then you get something good to eat instead of hotel chicken.
So I noticed they brought down the prices.
Yeah, because I think people weren't going. Well, hotel chicken, I mean, it's famous, right? Hotel chicken, that's a famous recipe. So make sure you give that information to Lori if you can attend that. It's really good. That's I think, a really useful conference. A lot of presenters from all over the state that are either teachers or, school staff, or some of them are companies. So that's kind of a sales pitch. But there's some really cool stuff going on in the state, and it's good to see what everybody else is doing.
And it's easy because it's
And
right
it's easy 'cause
downtown,
it's Portland
not
Marriott.
costly for us.
Yeah, so that's good. There's also an OSB Fall Regional Dinner Meeting that Lori put in your packets. I think those are good to go to at least once. So you it's a networking thing with other school board members and OSBA. So if you want to go to that, let Lori know, and she'll get that, get us signed up. And I think that's everything on my list. Yeah. Well, that I'm not ready to do. I don't have the board committee assignments ready. We will,
No worries.
unfortunately, we will have to vote on those on October 5th. Even though it's, we're trying to do business in one meeting, but I will have it ready then.
They could be consent agenda.
Yeah, it's a consent
You're
agenda item.
talking about the different committees?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will have that for next meeting, because I
can't
didn't have
envision
everybody's data.
someone Just, who's going to disagree?
Right, although I did hear a suggestion by
Wait,
Anna
oh,
to
wait.
have a
You
family
can't.
engagement.
I just simply
no,
would state,
that
don't
would be a
put people on
superintendent's
committees that they
committee.
didn't ask and they're not here.
That's when we went and talked, what was a board committee, what was superintendent, we decided that would be a superintendent's committee.
The leadership did.
Well, it's just with OSBA. They
OSBA.
qualified
Oh,
under-
with-
it was-
they
help
went
with-
through.
They went through all our committees with us,
Okay,
and we talked about what each committee did, and then they helped us.
yeah. I just want
Figure that business
to
out.
make sure that we develop opportunities for members of the community to participate in those. I think
yeah.
that there are a lot of,
Most definitely.
even though they're not official board committees, they're superintendent.
they're
They could
district
help.
committees.
District committees, yeah.
And we used to have a CAC committee, and that was our group that actually went and, pursued the lead testing way before all that stuff blew up in our,
Yeah, the community committees,
Western
the
neighbor.
superintendent-run committees they carry weight.
Yep. Okay.
yeah, the CAC even had its own bylaws and stuff, so it was, unfortunately, people stopped attending because whatever. Okay, I've through my whole list. Before I let you guys talk, I just want to remind, we need a group picture after the meeting so that Holly at the district office doesn't kill me. So don't flee.
Right here or over there?
Wherever,
Josh, where are we going for
wherever
that
Josh
picture?
wants
Are
to
we
take a
here?
group picture.
Usually we just do it in here.
Right here. Yeah, just,
So don't run off after the meeting. Okay. So,
okay.
other business from other people, now that I made it through my whole long list. Anybody? Other business? Future agenda items?
A couple really small ones, actually. One is, you probably wonder why I'm constantly talking like this. Josh has been testing out live streaming board meetings, as well as putting the board meetings permanently online, and I think this is something that we're kind of in beta in right now. One of the things that we're having a problem with is the sound, right? So we kind of have to, as board members, eat our mic a little bit so that can be live streamed. I've also heard from at least one member of the community that's hard of hearing, that it's very difficult for people sitting out there to hear. So that's another reason why I think we just need to do a little bit of that. So I would love to see maybe our next board meeting online, like permanently for the public, because I think it just, especially if we're going to do a lot of these informational type meetings, people may not want to come since they don't have an opportunity to testify, that it would be really important to have those online.
I strongly second that.
You said you had two things.
Oh, I wanted to thank the district for its statement around DACA. Thank you very much on September 7th for producing that statement. I'm not sure who all was involved in that, but as somebody who works, a lot with these communities, I just know how appreciated that was to have a strong statement of support for the youth.
Thank you. Anybody else have other business or future agenda items? Okay, board member reports. Kyle?
Pass.
Andrea?
Good job.
Anna?
I would like to report that my son started kindergarten this year at Cherry Park Elementary. So I just want to, again, give many accolades. He's had a wonderful transition. He's been fully supported from administration to teachers to other parents and families. He's had a superb experience so far. We have nothing but high hopes for his experience there. So thank you all very much.
Bryce?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Stephanie?
Yeah, a couple things. I just wanted to let you know that I testified at Metro this a couple days ago around affordable housing issues, and basically giving kind of a picture of what's happening in David Douglas and our need for a regional strategy, as I think also Andrea mentioned, and that we need to address the issue of homelessness in our community and have housing for families as part of that as gentrification is moving east. Also, gardens. I would like at some point to be able to talk a little bit about the community gardens. I had the opportunity to go on the White Glove Tour, which seems very elitist in its terminology, but I know what you mean, where you go and you inspect facilities and get an opportunity to meet with administrators as well as custodial staff and see the summer projects. And it was really great as a new board member to be able to see every single building in the district. Great to see that we have gardens. They are not in good repair. And to me, this isn't just a matter of like community pride and it looking beautiful. We also know that there's food insecurity in our community. So I'd like to see what we can do to elevate that. And I'm happy to help and to also think about doing that through the foundation. Looking for some funding to support community gardens. That's it.
Okay. Rita?
Just a couple things. First, in regard to schools, I've been on grandma duty this week, so I've been taking my granddaughter to Gilbert Heights every day, and I mentioned to Ken earlier, but I said to everyone so they hear it, and he said they, through the administrative, what do you call it, your academy, they were focusing on making kids feel welcome, and I saw such a difference, because this is the third year I'll be volunteering in Gilbert Heights. So to walk in there and see the principal greeting everyone, this counselor, assistants greeting, teachers at the door greeting, whether it's giving high fives or hugs or whatever, that there was just an energy about it that I was witnessing this week and stuff. Because a lot of our kids need hugs, you know, and things like that. I remember helping in first grade, and teacher asked, "Is it all right if they hug you?" And I said, "Of course." First graders especially like hugs. So, but it just seeing your academy did very well because you really saw a difference in the schools. In regard to housing, not quite the last meeting, but the stakeholders group for the housing bond, we have our draft framework out, and they're taking public comments on it. And it's on the Portland Housing Bureau's website. So if you want to make comments on it, we're focusing on 4 populations. We're looking at different things with locality, where things are located. They're shooting for 1,300 new units of affordable housing. 600 will be at the 0 to 30%, where there's an enormous need. And then I think it's 650, don't catch me right on that number, I'm doing from memory, for family, 2 to 3, at least 2 to 3 bedrooms, so where their needs are. But if you want to make a comment on it, and then we're meeting on the 27th to look at the comments and make any changes to framework before it goes to City Council in October. And then they can start spending the money and start doing things. So anyway, I did get into the criteria. They're going to look at schools to not put too many, only put one family unit in each school catchment area. If they do, not to concentrate it. So there's a focus on not concentrating, as well as giving opportunity to people to meet transportation, have transportation, et cetera. So anyway, that's it.
Okay, and I missed one of Lori's reminders regarding the October board work session, which we were also trying to schedule with our OSB OSBA facilitator. If you have not responded to Lori's calendar of possible October dates, please do so. So,
I gave it October dates, didn't I?
she sent out a doodle at some point? She sent out one
That
doodle.
means we're gonna have
last week.
3 October meetings.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we love each other and we want to be with each other all the time. Okay, for my board member report, I didn't have anything as spectacular as a kindergartner starting. I had just a plain old high schooler going to her sophomore year, so definitely looking at the end of the light of the tunnel there. She doesn't see it that way, but I do. She thinks it's gonna be forever. I know it's coming up very quickly, and so I'm already starting the, oh my, I'm gonna have to find a hobby in 3 years. That's my youngest one out of the house.
Let me
And
tell
I
you-
don't want your hobby,
No.
because you go to way too many meetings. You go to so many meetings, it's crazy. And that's not gonna happen.
You'll find you'll fill your time.
Okay, all right. With that, I adjourn this meeting.
Remember photo, you guys, yep, photo.